Hi everybody, it's Christina from Adventures in Polishland, and today I'm here to share some book recommendations for Shorty September. This is an annual booktube event where you read short books, and what I love about this event, which I first discovered last year, is that there are no rules. So you define what short means to you. For me, it's anything that is 250 pages or less. And there are challenges that you can participate in, but you don't have to. As long as you're reading short books, you are participating in Shorty September. And I had discovered this event last year. I saw Greg over at Supposedly Fun post about it on Instagram, and I hopped right in, and I had an amazing time. I don't know if I'll be able to read short books this year in September just because I am doing a big reading challenge of my own and I need to stay on pace if I am going to finish it by the end of the year, but I still wanted to share some recommendations with you. So I'm going to share a handful of short book recommendations today, and then I'm also going to leave in the comments a video that I filmed last year if you want even more short book recommendations. All of the books that I'm going to share with you today I've read within the last year or so, and I really enjoyed them and think that they would be great picks for Shorty September. So let's go ahead and get started with my recommendations, and I will also mention I will put links to all of the hosts in the description box below if you want to learn more about Shorty September. I had so much fun participating last year that even though I might not be participating this year, I still wanted to get up some book recommendations for those of you who are. So let's jump in with The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. This is a dystopian novel. It takes place after a nuclear war, and there is a tight-knit community of people who have been left behind in the wake of this war, and they are a very religious group. They want everything to model what is God's creation, so if something is born with a deformity of any kind whatsoever, they will eliminate it, and that goes for humans, it goes for their livestock, and it even goes for their vegetables. If they deviate at all from what they believe is God's perfect image, they will get rid of it. And so, as you can tell, this is a very conservative community with very strict standards, and the main character is a young person named David who actually does deviate, but he doesn't deviate with anything physical that can be inspected, but with his mind. He and some other people in his community can speak to each other with their minds. And so the book follows their story and whether or not they get caught with this deviation and what comes from that. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4-star rating. I think this is an everlasting story because it really talks about how we treat one another as human beings, what it means to be human, and what it means to coexist with a vast, diverse group of people. This book was published in the 1950s, and I think you can definitely see the influence that World War II had on the story itself. If you enjoyed dystopian stories, I think this is a really great one, and it's an easy and fast read that will get you thinking. Next up, I wanted to recommend an author, and that is Emi Yagi. She is Japanese, and she has 2 books that have been translated into English, and I've read and enjoyed both of them. The first one is Diary of a Void. This one is about a young woman who works in a corporate office, and she is the only woman in her office, and she realizes that she gets treated differently than everyone else on the basis of being a woman. And so she has to make coffee for people, she has to clean up the break room, she has to do other administrative tasks, and she also is required to stay late beyond her working hours, and even though none of these things are in her job description. And she is so fed up with her poor treatment that she decides that she's going to become pregnant. She's single, she has no plans to actually get pregnant, but she announces one day in the office that she is expecting, and very quickly everyone's attitudes towards her change. She's no longer required to stay late, she's no longer required to do all of the menial tasks, and the big secret, of course, is that she isn't actually going to have a baby, and that is going to become known in 9 months. Or is it? That's the mystery of this novel. One of those books that you're not really sure exactly what happened, but it keeps you on the edge of your seat to find out. The other book that I have read by Yagi is When the Museum is Closed. This is her newer release. This is about a young woman who is struggling with her mental health, and you know that she is not really doing that well after graduating college. She stays to herself most of the time, and she has this shell around her everywhere she goes, and she finds it very difficult to interact with people. But one day, her old professor recommends her for a job at the museum, and she is tasked with speaking to the statue of Venus in Latin. And she is one of the only people who can have this job because most people do not speak Latin since it is technically a dead language. And she begins going to the museum when it is closed to converse with Venus, and the two begin a very unlikely friendship that perhaps turns into something more. This is a very quick read. I actually read it in one sitting on a train ride from Boston to New York City, and I was very confused by the story, but also really interested. So I think this is definitely something unique. If you like more speculative fiction or books where you need to read into what is going on to get meaning from it, I think this is a good one. And if you want to explore an author, I think Yagi is a great way to go, because although her books are both short and both quick reads, they will make you think, and I think these would be good buddy reads too. There's so much to discuss with both of these. Before I forget, I do want to shout out the translators of all of these books. So Diary of a Void is translated by David Boyd and Lucy North, and When the Museum is Closed is translated by Yuki Tahima. And now I have two more translated books. These are both from Europa editions. And the first one is Baba Dunja's Last Love. This is by Alina Bronsky, and it is translated by Tim Moore from the German. This is about an older woman, Baba Dunja, who lives in the Ukraine, and she lives in the area where the Chernobyl disaster happened. And she is one of the few people who has decided to either stay in their home or to move into that area, despite the fact that it is not suitable for human life. And you really find out her story, not only living in this area and how she gets by visiting a village on a bus several miles away from her home, but you also find out about her life before Chernobyl and what it was like and why she has decided to remain alone in her home despite knowing that she's going to die there, probably getting very sick. This is a great story to learn more about history. I really did not know much about this part of the world and how people were affected by this disaster before reading this book. It actually made me want to go online and do some research after the fact. But I think this is also very unique because you have a very old woman who has persevered so much in her life, and she is still so strong despite her physical weariness. She is also part of a very unique community of people who have decided to spend their last days living in Chernobyl, and it's just very intriguing, very heartfelt. There are some very dramatic events as well that make this book very readable and interesting. I think this is a great mix of historical fiction with a little bit of drama thrown in, something for everyone really. And if you like books about an old woman, I highly recommend this one. And my last recommendation, which is my favorite of the bunch, which is why I saved it for last, and it is Nives by Sacha Naspini. This one is translated from the Italian by Clarissa Botsford. This is a short little book. You could definitely read it in one sitting. And this is about another old woman in Italy. On the first page of the novel, her husband goes out to feed the pigs on their farm and he dies. And a pig begins eating him before she intervenes. And from there, you follow her after the funeral. She decides to return to her home alone. She doesn't really know what to do with herself because she's lived in this house with her husband her entire life, essentially, since she was very, very young after marriage. Nives does have a daughter, and her daughter wants Nives to go and live with her, but Nives decides that she is going to stay in her marital home, even though she's having trouble coping with the loss of her husband. But everything hinges on a telephone call that she makes to the vet after her chicken starts acting very curious. And the rest of the book follows their phone call, which takes so many twists and turns. You will be laughing, you will be crying, and you will be thinking about how this book would make a perfect stage play, because that's definitely what I thought while I was reading it. I don't want to give too much away just because it is really fun to explore this book and experience it for the first time. And I, as a matter of fact, would love to reread this book because I just have really fond memories of the reading experience. I think it tells a great story. It goes to show that you never really know who someone is behind the scenes, and there is so much more to a person besides their outward appearance and story. This one I would definitely recommend if you would like a heartfelt yet comedic tale about an old Italian woman looking back on her life. So here are my 5 book recommendations for Shorty September. Again, I will leave the recommendation video I made last year in the description box, along with all of the information for the hosts. You'll have to let me know if you're participating in Shorty September. And also, I would love to know your favorite short book in the comments, because I have really come to love short books. Although there is nothing like diving into a really long book for an extended period of time, I think it can be even more impressive when an author is able to tell an incredible story with few pages. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!